This episode is sponsored by House Up. Visit houseofnashville.com to learn more about Belmont's student-run boutique, located at 2006 Belmont Boulevard.
Welcome to the What If podcast. We're sharing an ever-growing collection of stories from the Belmont entrepreneur community to inspire you to start and keep going. I'm your host, Elizabeth Gortmaker. Here we go. Hi, Kristin.
Hi.
How are you?
Excited. I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on. This is so fun.
I know.
We have known each other for a very long time, and it's funny thinking back to when we were in college together. Like, if we could have just seen the future, I think we probably would have laughed at ourselves a lot.
I think we would too. I don't know. I still remember my freshman summer. I think you were out traveling, doing something wild. I slept in your bedroom. I was like, I just lived in your bedroom and you weren't even there. And it was a great summer. So it's fun to 10 years or whatever later be talking about Belmont and entrepreneurship when that's where we met. It's so fun.
Girl, it's more than 10 years.
No.
Like closer to 20. Yes.
No.
Yes.
I had a moment today where I saw someone else from college. I ran into him. I hadn't seen him in years. And I was like, oh no, I'm old. We're getting old.
Very true. Yes. Okay. Well, so going back, you graduated in 2010. You were a music education major.
Yeah.
But now you are this amazing, world-renowned photographer. Not even. It's so true. And so many other things too. You've just become this really amazing entrepreneur who has your talents coming out in so many different ways. So you are here today to tell that story, and I cannot wait to just have this conversation. So let's go back to the beginning. Walk us through post-graduation. When did you start to get into photography? How did you go from music education to photography? What was that journey?
Okay, so I knew while I was in college that I was not meant to be a music teacher. And that's kind of a discouraging place to be where you're like, I came here for this thing. But I was like, you know what? I know that it's going to serve me in so many different ways. And it really has. So right after college, I worked in a nonprofit mentoring high school students. So that was my first job out of college. I did these big camps for kids. I, spoke at these events. I mentored teenagers and I had so much fun, and also was thrown into this environment of organizing big groups of wild people and, traveling with them and all these different things. I learned so much in that first job. And of course, also trying to figure out all the things that go along with being an adult and paying your bills and, figuring out how to do life. Turns out it's expensive to be an adult and to not be in college. The job I had was not providing a ton of income, and it was tight. And I had wanted to do photography my entire high school career, college career, and it was that thing that always evaded me. My school schedule never lined up so that I could take a photography class. Never, ever. They were always the same time as something I required. So I always wanted to, but never had the opportunity. And I was given a little camera for my birthday, and after I'd already graduated, and I just fell in love with it because, I had done all the things. I started an Etsy shop. I sold cookies. I baked wedding cakes. I had a music degree. I had done all of the things. And someone gave me a camera, and I just started taking pictures of everybody. Mm-hmm. And I had all of these teenagers that loved having their picture taken that I was working with. And it became part of just something I got to do it for my job as a, hey, let's just go to the park and take photos, So that was how it started as a hobby. I couldn't put it down. it was this cool way of blending the two things of loving people, loving connection, and creating something really beautiful. So yeah, it started as that. And pretty quickly, I just started getting hired. It was a $50 photo shoot here and there. It was, friends asking for favors. And eventually I was making more money doing my side gig of photography than I was at my full-time job, which still wasn't a lot, but it was like I could quit and I could start growing it. So that's how it started.
So was that the breaking point, the money? Was it really a financial decision? Like once you had enough coming in from the photography, you'd quit your job and pursue this full-time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it started to interfere with my normal job. Like I wanted to leave early to take this photo shoot gig, or I wanted to, take this wedding and wasn't available. So it was starting to interfere, and it was still a scary jump because, if you have a full-time job, like that consistent paycheck is really nice. Those benefits are really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had always been the breadwinner, the provider. It was like if I wasn't making money, we were eating quesadillas for dinner, as we did for years. So, so yeah, it was a money security thing. But also, I wouldn't say that I felt totally secure when I made the leap. It was I have enough proof that I can do this, that I'm not making an unwise decision, but it was still really scary.
Is it still scary today?
Yeah.
Because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's something, I'm like, you've made it. You're so awesome. And that's a common thing where they're like, no, the fear never goes away.
Yeah. It does and it doesn't. The last few years, I feel like I've developed some safer revenue streams that kind of cushion some of the risky moves. Because I think, if you're interested in entrepreneurship, if you're listening to this podcast, you have a little bit of a daredevil in you, like you just do. And so like chasing some of those big goals, those risky projects, those weddings in, Istanbul, like those are so fun. And also like if you have some revenue streams that are more consistent, it can kind of like calm your nervous system a little bit and allow you to feel a little bit better. But yeah, for years and years, people from the outside would look and be like, you are really successful. And I would be like, I'm still scared that tomorrow I won't be cool and no one will hire me anymore.
But I think that's where that diversification comes in, and you've been like masterful at doing that. And that's a really common thing now. Like even in whatever industry you're in, the whole landscape is just crazy right now. COVID was crazy. Everything since then has been crazy. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. So that's kind of what we're finding just across the board. It's like you've got to find other sources of revenue because some will take off at certain seasons while others are lower, and it bounces around. But you really were doing that years ago. You found a way to do that. And I want to get into all of that. Before we kind of dive into that, let's stick with the photography for a minute more. So you have done primarily wedding photos all around the world, or what's been kind of your bread and butter with photography?
Yeah. It started as me wanting to photograph everything. I did photo shoots. I did musicians with llamas in fields. I, did tour photos and, corporate America type things. When I got pregnant with my son, he's almost 7. So it was like 7, 8 years ago, I really started making choices around my business that reflected the lifestyle I wanted to lead. So I was like, I really want to be a present mom. I wanted to try to have it all of be like, mostly stay-at-home mom and make 6 figures as you do, like easy, right? It's not. It still isn't easy. But like, I was like, yeah, I want to adjust my business to really support my home life. And I was like, doing weddings is that way because I can be with my son during the day and I can shoot weddings on the weekends and work 10 to 20 weekends a year and that's it.
Mm.
So that was when I really niched down. And I would say like making that move helped my business grow faster. Because I think when you really focus on one thing for a time, it can propel your business forward faster. And now you would look at my business and be like, she's not niched at all. She does everything under the sun. But it's kind of like that piano lesson of you have to learn how to do it right first and get really good at one thing. And then you can start breaking all the rules and doing whatever you want. So I've found that to be true for me and for a lot of the clients that I coach, of like narrowing that focus allows you to charge more for what you do, become an expert in that niche, and then you can start expanding what you offer after that.
Yeah. Where all have you gone? Where have you traveled to?
Yeah, I have done weddings in France and Italy, and I did a nonprofit project in China and one in India and one in 4 different countries in Latin America, and Turkey. So many different places. I love traveling, and that was my goal and my dream for a long time, was to get hired to travel, and was able to do a lot of that, which I'm really, really grateful for.
That's so amazing. You have gotten a lot of press. You've gotten a lot of accolades and write-ups and some really big-time magazines and sources. As you've scaled your business and grown your business, how, has it been referral based? Has it kind of grown naturally just by referrals, or did you really have to make a very focused, concerted effort, with your marketing or whatever else that helped propel you to do some of these larger weddings and to get some of this recognition? Or did it all kind of happen naturally?
No, there was definitely some concerted effort, but I would still say it was mostly referrals that's built my business, like probably 95%. But you can create a referral strategy that lets that be more impactful. So that's one of the things I teach people all the time is like, listen, social media will change. When I was building my photography business, Instagram didn't exist. And then it changed into something that you only put your food on. And then it became something that people, now it's the biggest source of my leads right now. But like everything changes so quickly. And so if the core of what you do is based on, especially these kind of service-based businesses, if it's based on referrals, reputation, creating really strong relationships with the people that you work with, life can change, the world can change, and you still have a protected business because it's built on like a really strong foundation. So with the different articles and publications and things like that, that is something you have to actively pursue. And you have to be willing to get a lot of no's. You have to work with the right people, and you have to put yourself out there. So there is this like moment of deciding I'm going to be more visible, and that's going to mean like a lot of rejection. Mm-hmm. So there was a couple years where I had to make a decision of I'm really focusing on this for a while and letting my work be seen. I want people to see my name everywhere, which didn't feel natural for me. There was a lot of mindset work that went into that because I had always felt like that would make me a bad person. That would make people think I thought a lot of myself or whatever, so had to do a lot of kind of that confidence building to be like, I want to let my work go farther than where it is, and do the things and take the action that needed to be taken to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting because you've always been so incredibly talented and intelligent, but you're not the loudest person in the room. More often than not, you've kind of been more comfortable being maybe more so the fly on the wall and the person who'll be there to help, but you're not running the show. Fast forward to your career where you are now, it's like you're out there, you're fighting for this, you're getting your name out there in magazines. I know exactly what you mean, where that's really not natural for you personally, even though it's absolutely deserved, Yeah. And so how do you respond to that when you do start to see the accolades and, your name out there? How did that feel at first? Is it rewarding or is it like, wow, finally I'm being noticed? Or is there still some discomfort with that where it feels, I guess, awkward?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of things. I feel really confident in my work now, and I think it does when people start recognizing you. It's like you're good, but then someone else said, people start telling you that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I really am good. And so that it does help kind of build your confidence. It shows you're on the right direction. I think it helps you kind of make those moves. I would still say it feels uncomfortable or just doesn't feel real, it doesn't change who I am as a person. So those things were great. I also think a lot of those goals didn't fulfill me in the way that I expected them to. You kind of think there's going to be this moment where you arrive, where everything is sunshine and rainbows, and people are like, wow, this is awesome, And there's a tiny bit of that. The first time I had my work in a national magazine, I was so excited to celebrate it. But pretty quickly, the goalpost moves and your goal changes and you keep going forward. So I do think there's some of that that's healthy because, I stay pretty grounded and just keep moving forward. I think yes to all of the things.
And it's not what motivates you. It's not what keeps you coming back. Really, it's the work at the end of the day that is what you're passionate about. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy when it comes to photographing these moments, because whether it's a wedding or some of the other types of photography that you do, it's very intimate, and these strangers are letting you into these very pivotal moments of their lives. What's your process for going into that and for making your client feel comfortable and for delivering, a product that they're going to want?
Yeah. So I think each artist has a different superpower that they lean into. And I think mine is connecting with people and making people feel comfortable. And so when you start kind of figuring out what yours is and building that into how you work, it creates a process that you can be really confident in. So for me, there was a moment earlier in my career where I photographed a wedding of a friend of mine. And I got to the end of it and I was like, I effing crushed that. I crushed it. And I was like, why can't they all be that way? And I started thinking about what made that experience different than some of the other weddings I'd photographed. And I knew the bride really well. I knew her fiance. I knew her family. I knew who her friends were, who was important to her, what relationships were strained, where she might get anxious. I knew all these things. And so I took that moment and said, if my best work is when I know these things, how can I take that into working with someone I don't know? Mm-hmm. So I really changed my process to be mostly relational based. I spend a ton of time getting to know people. I ask really nosy questions. I ask about who in their family stresses them out the most, and what they're struggling with, what they're excited about, who their top 10 favorite people are at their wedding. I know these people really well, so that when I'm documenting their wedding or their photo shoot or whatever it is, I want them to look back at it and be like, she really knew me, or these look like us. She knew exactly who I wanted a picture of me hugging. She, all these different things. Because there is a way of doing photography which is more fly on the wall. I'm a lot more active in the event because, you've had a wedding. You might really love someone and you didn't get an opportunity to hug them, and so there's no picture of you and that person.
I know.
But if someone knows, they can help make that happen. So you do have that memory and that photo of that memory. So that's how I approach it, is I figured out my superpower and I really leaned into it. And And that also requires me to take less events, which is the reason why my photography business is based on less volume and higher prices. Again, because like creating that really beautiful connection and my best work is so important to me, and that's how I can do it. And not everyone works that way. Some people's businesses are a different model, but that's mine.
Yeah. So you became this very successful wedding photographer very quickly post-graduation. And then you're now adding on and doing some other things. Tell us about Danger School.
Yeah. Okay, so I do coaching for photographers and creatives. That started, some of the biggest growth in my business was when I was coached, and I started seeing the difference of investing in your own education, learning about marketing, learning about running a business. Like, you can't just put your art out there and expect people to pay it. And that's what I think creatives think is, so I'm going to be discovered. I'm going to create this thing. Everyone's going to realize how amazing it is. And really spending the time to learn about business and, what you guys are doing in the entrepreneurship program, like it makes such a difference when you know these principles and you know how to connect with your clients. So I developed a program called Danger School, and it is mindset and business and this really relational driven business model, teaching creatives and photographers how to run businesses that bring them joy, that, fulfill their creative need and really help other people. So it's like an online course and a coaching program. I also have retreats and one-on-one coaching and a bunch of different things that I offer now. So that's kind of I niched for a while, and now I get to do all these really cool things and help other people be the best photographer that they can be. And that's very fulfilling for me.
Yeah. Tell us about the name.
So, my last name is Sweeting. And I think there is kind of like you said that I think the perception of me can be that I just hide in a corner, or I'm a little bit more shy, or don't take the attention on myself. And I don't think a lot of that actually is me. I think a lot of that is societal conditioning, some fear, some lack of confidence. And so there was a turning point for me in my life where I let myself be a more full expression of who I am, which is much more this dangerous creative, or this, So the course is called Danger School because it is kind of, you take this step into a scary zone where you are more of yourself. And when you're more of yourself, you can feel a little bit more vulnerable to rejection or to someone not accepting you for who you are. And so there's this moment of fear, but like really leaning into who you are and who you are authentically and what your strengths are is so powerful and dangerous in the best way.
Yeah. That's so fun. Okay. And then tell me about your retreats, because you do some really amazing retreats.
So we launched Study Abroad. That was the first educational offer that I had, which is a retreat called Study Abroad, where we take a group of people and we go and learn about business, mindset, photography, art, living life differently. And we go and do it in a different country while we're meeting people that live there, experiencing culture, kind of like, honestly, it was inspired by my study abroad experience at Belmont. I went to Greece for a month with a group from Belmont. I learned so much about the world and about myself. It really changed me in so many ways. So it's based off of that experience, but doing it for adults. And we have the best time. I surprise them with things constantly. I've like surprised them with, sunset boat cruises and trying different foods. And I don't know, it's just fun to get to watch people delight in the world and find creativity and inspiration through their surroundings and the group of people they're traveling with. And I think that's a really cool thing about being in college and doing study abroad or being with your classmates is you get so much inspiration from each other, and it's not naturally built in to the outside world, outside of college. You have to create it for yourself in a lot of different ways, and I think people forget how important that is. So yeah, that's what we do. We bring back the magic of study abroad in college.
I love
And we've
it.
just done some other ones too. Like we did one to Amangiri, which was a client experience based one. It's this really, really nice resort in Arizona.
Mhm.
So I just think learning through experience is very, very powerful.
Yes, absolutely. And getting uncomfortable a little bit, or just getting outside of your normal routine. You got to change it up a
Mhm.
little bit to think outside the box.
Exactly.
That's brilliant. One of these days I want to go on one of your trips.
Please.
Yes.
They're so fun. And just like the conversations that you have when you're with a group of people that are creatively minded, who want to live life a little differently than the norm,
Mhm.
and are like excited about supporting each other. I think it's easy to think of your competition as someone who is against you instead of someone who can be for you.
Yeah.
And so when you really make those meaningful connections, it can propel your business forward and just make your life sweeter.
This episode is sponsored by House Of. House Of is a student-run, community-focused retail experience, providing the Nashville community with trendy clothes and locally made giftables for men and women. Run by the Cone Center for Entrepreneurship, House Of is a learning lab for 15 student leaders who manage every aspect of the business. To learn more, visit houseofnashville.com.
I would love to hear a story, if you have any, of some of your students, I guess, or whatever, your clients, someone that's like gone through your class that you've mentored one-on-one that's gone through this program, and how they've changed on the other side of it. Do you have any fun stories that you can share?
Yeah, I have a ton of them. So one would be my friend Jen, who she found my first study abroad retreat ever on Instagram. Didn't know me, had never didn't even realize we were connected on Instagram. And she signed up for the first one, came and met a group of strangers in Iceland. And she was just doing photography at the time. And since then, we have done some different coaching programs together. She's actually come on like every study abroad trip. And she would be fine with me sharing this story too, because we talk about it. We talk about it a lot. But she was hitting some walls with her photography business. It just wasn't flowing. She went through a move, and it was really hard to rebuild in another place. And I was like, did you know you have this other skill of you really are good at taking an idea and helping people walk it through to the end? Not everyone's good at that. Most creatives are visionaries. And she was more of an integrator. And that's a term coined by someone that I'm not going to remember right now, but it's in a book, and they refer to it as visionary and integrator. But she started her own VA business, and part of it was to alleviate the pressure from her photography business. And within a year, she'd created a 6-figure virtual assisting business, was getting to travel all over the world, was getting to support people in really cool ways, use her gift in another way. And her photography business also grew because I think in part she'd taken the pressure off of the thing that was kind of getting stuck for her.
Yeah.
So she's really been able to grow that. And I have a lot of other stories like that too, of people that come in just being frustrated, being doubting themselves or their talents, really struggling with confidence. And I do think working on that confidence piece, having people behind you that support you, it's way more powerful than you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's really foundational to everything else you do. Because if you believe in what you're doing and you know you have a really great product, like you have to be the person that believes in it first before anyone else will.
Yep. It's funny, that came up in another conversation that's coming out this season of the podcast, but that same thing, like you've got to believe in yourself first and then others will come on board. But yeah, it starts in here. So I know you've got a podcast now. You are the podcast pro. I'm like, you got to teach me everything. But your intro to your podcast, I'm just going to read it because I wrote it down. It says, I've built 2 multiple 6-figure businesses while single parenting my 4-year-old son. So I know how difficult balance and the ebbs and flows of a creative business can be. And I'm just like, wow, Kristin, you have just done so much since graduating 12 years ago. But tell me a little bit about your podcast and why you did that and what kind of conversations you get into with your podcast. And then also it's easy to see photographs and to see how amazing your work is. And it can just look like everything's rosy and beautiful. But I know there's so much hard work and passion that goes into it. And then also just life and everything that you've juggled as you've grown up, So let's dig into some of that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. Well, this is a little bit of my personal story, but I feel like I really believe personal life and business intertwine and they're all connected. And especially if you're wanting to run an authentic creative business, it's going to overlap into your life and into your friendships and into your relationships. And so when one thing is struggling, the other thing can struggle. And when one thing's thriving, the other thing, it's all messy and tied together. Mm-hmm. And I actually think that's really beautiful. But, I married someone that I met at Belmont really young while I was still in college. And when we were going through a divorce and I had a young son, I was like, well, I have a choice of whether to spend a lot of time feeling bad about myself or to create the life that I really want for me and my son. That's the reason that my business is at the point that it's at, because I made a choice in that moment of some hard things happening to rise above it and be like, no one's coming to save me here. Like I'm gonna do it. Mm-hmm. So, we were living down in Columbia in this really beautiful old house, and I would try to be with him during the day. He was like 2 or 3 when all this was happening, and just so much energy. Could not look away for a second, or he'd be running into the street or doing something crazy. Found him like sitting in the kitchen covered in peanut butter and chocolate one time because he'd like gotten into the cabinets. So I started the podcast on my porch after he went to bed. I would invite friends over and be like, do you want to record this podcast with me? And people really generously drove down to Columbia and sat on my porch, and we drank some whiskey and we talked about life and business and creativity. And it probably was partially wanting to be like, I've had moments of feeling really lost and alone, and I don't want other people to feel that way. Mm. And also, I have a pretty deep core belief that when you're thriving, you owe it to humanity to help other people with that. So it was kind of like out of this growing abundance that I wanted other people to come along with me and to share some of that joy and the things that I was learning and the business that was growing. So yeah, I think it was that both and I don't want people to feel alone in the hard times and want them to know that like here's ways to kind of pull through that. So yeah, that was how Danger School was recorded and made too. It was at 10 o'clock at night after I put my son to bed, and I could just see, I was like, I know if I put this time in now to create this program, that it can be something that really serves us later, gives me time back, takes me out of this like I have to travel to work. And some of those painful moments of having to leave him with my mom or do things to go to work, like some of those also drove that decision. So I was just meeting with a friend yesterday, and I was like, yeah, that program that I recorded on my porch while my 2-year-old slept has now made me over $1 million. And it's because of deciding that I was going to do things to help my future self. Yeah. That I can look back 4 years later or 3 years, however long it's been, and be like, that got me here, you know?
Yeah. Man, it really, one of the fascinating things about growing up is just that hindsight. You know, I find myself so many times, if I'm like, if I would have just known 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever, if I could have just seen a picture, you know. And then on the flip side, sometimes things that really stress you out now, it's like, I know a year from now, you won't even remember this situation or whatever. So just let it go. But, and having the length of time where you could say, if I could start doing something today, who knows the fruits of it down the road.
Well, it's hard in the moment because, you know, you understand this recording a podcast. You're putting all this time and effort into something that you have no idea if anyone's going to listen to. Like, that's what it feels like when you start a podcast. You're like, I am working really hard to make something that might do nothing, you know? And then that's what it feels like when you're building any kind of business, is you have to believe that it's going to work out. And if it doesn't, that it's going to lead to a thing that does work out. Mm-hmm. And you have to keep going. Because I think what most people do is they quit before they've really been consistent with it long enough. Yeah. You're not going to have 1 million downloads on your podcast in the first month, unless you're like really, really famous, you know? So it's just like you have to be willing to keep going and put in the work, not knowing that it's going to be successful. Because one of the things will be, and most people will quit, and you just have to be the one that outlasts them.
Yeah. So Kristin, what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh, I have great days. I have great days, but it took a lot of work to get here. Okay. So I love to walk. I sometimes go on, you know, hour-long, 2-hour-long walks in the morning. I do some coaching calls with some of my clients. So I have a couple programs I run. So I'll be on the phone kind of coaching people through different things. I record a podcast once a week. I spend a ton of time with my family, make dinner. I set pretty strong boundaries around my like personal time, my friend time, and my family time. So, I mean, there were times where I was just working 2 days a week. I do work more days a week now, but maybe 2 or 3 hours a day for maybe 3 or 4 days a week. And then when I do have a wedding, that's a long day. That's a lot of energy, or a retreat. So I do about 6 weddings a year now, and photo shoots when I feel like it. I have a ton of freedom. But that's all by design.
Yes, you have mastermind this life for yourself. What does your team look like?
I have a part-time virtual assistant, and there's seasons where she's more full-time, but right now it's just me and her. I also have some freelance coaches who will jump in and coach some of my programs. And I really feel like when you are starting your business, when you're growing a business, you have an opportunity to create more beauty in the world of the business that you're running than what's in the outside world. So you're kind of creating this world for yourself. And I learned this from one of my mentors. She's like, you have this micro economy. You get to pay your employees well. You get to prioritize health and mental wellness. So last year I had a bigger team, and we all took 1 whole month of sabbatical. It was a paid sabbatical. I was so proud of us for doing this. Like, did not work for a whole month or answer emails for a whole month, and everyone got paid for it. I was like, this is the way the world should be. And I'm putting it out there. This is part of the visionary thing. And then also reimbursing therapy, because, you know, we were in the middle of a panorama, or whatever you want to call it, you know, a panini, like how everyone's just calling it different things. But I was like, we need to prioritize this. Everyone is so burned out and tired. Yeah. And like, even when we're trying our best, it's really hard. And so we were able to reimburse counseling for everybody through our business, and just built in lots of space for us to be human. And I think that's a really, really cool thing. Even if you aren't a creative entrepreneur, if you're like, you know, I'm a bookkeeper, great. You still get to be creative in the business that you're building and be like, how do I wish the world was, and how can I do some of this in my business?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know it's so important with the creative space as well. Like, you can't be hustling 24/7, you know, to get this amazing, beautiful work. You've got to have the space to step away from it and then come back. Your whole mental well-being, we've got to have balance like that. So it's interesting because I find that a lot of young entrepreneurs are total into the hustle. Like it's 24/7. It never ends. I mean, I struggle with that too. It's like email is constant. Like, I mean, anytime, if you want to do some work, just pull out your phone and there's endless things that you need to do and it nags at you all the time. And when you're starting a business, of course, it can become your entire life. And so for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like their life, their identity is whatever it is that they've created. You, on the other hand, you took this other approach of, I want to create this certain life. And my work, like my job, what pays the bills, has to fit into what I want my life to be, and now you did put in so much work to get this off the ground. And obviously to be able to do what you do, there is this amazing skill and talent that you have fostered, and you've worked a really hard, long time to be able to do that. But I don't know, just talk to us a little bit more about your thought process, because I think this is really important for other entrepreneurs to hear and for, other young professionals to hear, or even older, seasoned professionals. Just tell us a little bit more about your philosophy of life and work and balance within all of that.
Yeah. I love talking about this. I also don't necessarily always feel balanced. I feel like sometimes it's sometimes it's more of another.
Yeah.
But I do feel like knowing yourself, knowing what you value as a person and how you want to show up as a person, if you use that as the foundation to your business, it's so much easier to ask for higher prices. It's so much easier to set really strong boundaries. And I really think those two things are the key to having a successful business that also gives you freedom. So it starts with that foundation of being like, I want to always be available for the people that need me. Or I want to be able to drop everything and go and help someone when they're having a hard time. And when you have those beliefs, then you can check yourself in every business decision off of that belief, because there will always be more work. Like Instagram is my job. I could be on there 24/7. I could be on there constantly, and sometimes I am. Like during a launch season, I don't always have great boundaries. But I think like when you are really clear about why you're building the business, and then don't get kind of like caught up in like, oh, this just needs to grow bigger and bigger and bigger, which is really easy and natural to do. And then I also think people are seasonal, business is seasonal, and different industries, you'll start noticing the ebbs and flows of business or inquiries. So for example, in the wedding industry, or in the Southeast in the wedding industry, there are times where everyone gets engaged. I don't know why, they just do. So there are a couple months where you're like, this is booking season. This is when people get engaged. This is when people are hiring.
Mm-hmm.
There are seasons where you might not get an inquiry. And if you're not keen on the ebbs and flows, you could take that as like, my business is failing.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can like recognize the seasons and be like, this is when I'm going to plan my month vacation, because no one wants to get married anyways, So anyway, some of it is like the naturalness of your business and what industry you're in. And then some of it is making really, really clear boundaries around what you want.
So Kristin, now you are here at Belmont. You are working with young entrepreneurs as an entrepreneur in residence, which is so fun that you are an alum of Belmont and you're back on campus to mentor entrepreneurs from all across campus. But you kind of started doing this already when you launched the Danger School, and you took your experience and your career in this creative industry and said, I've got some experience. I know what's up. I want to help other people avoid some common mistakes. So I'm curious, when it comes to like Danger School or other young creatives, what are some of those common mistakes that you see them making over and over and over again that you want to fix?
Totally. I think one big mistake that I see happen a lot is making decisions based on what you think other people want you to do or what you perceive other people to think about you. It's very, very easy to people please in your business. And, I think it's important to know what your customer wants and what their needs are, but not making your business decision based on if people are going to judge you for what you're doing is a big one. And it's a thing that holds a lot of people back. People are afraid to grow. I think especially people maybe who have been socialized to remain smaller are afraid to step into new levels of success and leadership because of fear of what people will think. So that's a big one. And we spend a lot of time honestly, it takes a lot of time to unravel that one and, still unraveling that one. Yeah. But I also think that getting too caught up in the growth and kind of missing the forest through the trees of like, I don't actually think every business has to scale to a huge size. I think there are so many different ways to grow, and it needs to be in line with your values and your vision for your life. And I think a lot of people just get caught up in like, I need to double my revenue every year. I need to grow bigger than what I was before. Mm-hmm. And I think that can lead to a lot of discontent and not, I guess, like missing the joy through all of it. Of like, if you're always saying right around the corner, I'll be happy. Yeah. The goals that, and I feel like this is stereotypical of like the goals won't make you happy. And there's like some truth and some not truth to that. Sorry, I'm like changing the subject a little bit. Okay. Money is important. It's okay to talk about money. It's okay to make money. Money gives you amazing things. And after you've hit a certain point, to continue growing and growing and growing won't be the thing that will bring you contentment. Mm-hmm. It could be a thing that helps you live out your values in different ways. So it's just kind of a reframing of that, of like growth. Growth is great as long as it's connected to your values and what's important to you as a person.
Let's talk about Belmont a little bit. Going back to your time at Belmont, was there anything that really prepared you for what was to come in the now 12 years since you've graduated?
Definitely study abroad. I would say everyone should go at least for a little bit and study abroad. And I also think opportunities to connect with people in the field that you want to be in, and the connections with your peers are huge. So like get involved, ask people questions about, like, your professors are a huge asset to you that I think not enough people take advantage of. So like ask questions, get nosy. How did they get where they were? Why are they doing what they're doing? There's so much knowledge at your fingertips, and you just got to be curious.
Yeah. So the name of the podcast is What If, because every entrepreneur starts out with a what if question. What if I could quit my full-time job and take photographs for a living? What if I could help other young creatives? And you really are a picture of that, because you keep asking that question and you keep doing, I say diversifying, but you keep trying new things and doing new things. It's really amazing and inspiring. Is there anything you would change, looking back? Like, do you ever wonder, what if I had done something differently? Or are you firmly in the camp of keep going forward?
I really think the only what if I had done this differently is what if I had believed I could sooner? Even after I made that initial leap, there are multiple times in my business that I held myself back and created a lot of pain for myself in the holding back, that I could have avoided if I just said the what if sooner.
Absolutely. I love that. What's your next what if? Do you have anything that keeps you up at night that you're really wanting to go dive into?
Yeah. A lot of my what ifs right now are around location freedom. Like, what if I could live in a different place a couple times a year?
Yeah.
What if I could host retreats in all these different places that I dream of seeing? What if I could run my business from New York City one summer and Nashville the next summer? I think it's that combination of lifestyle plus business dreams. What if I could grow my podcast to help more people?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a lot of my what ifs keep changing, and I think that's part of it. I used to think like someday I'll just be like, okay, I checked all the boxes, I did all the things I wanted to do. And creativity is fun because it just shifts into something else as long as you keep it alive. So yeah.
As we wrap up this interview, do you have any final advice for entrepreneurs who are just getting started?
Get a mentor sooner than later. Ask people's advice that are doing the thing that you want to do. So I think, get really clear on what's important to you, and then find someone that ties in with that. Mentors have changed my life. And the times where I was like, no, I know better, I want to do this by myself, I kind of isolate. Those were the times that I experienced the most financial pain. And as soon as kind of opening up and letting someone else's perspective in, or their experience, it's said a lot in kind of the mentoring community, but the thing that gets you to one level in your business isn't going to be the thing that gets you to the next level. So, for example, you can hustle really hard to make $100,000, and you don't double that hustle to get to $200,000 or $500,000 or $1 million. It's a total change in strategy to get there, not more work. So that I wish I knew sooner, and stopped trying to apply the same lessons, the bootstrapping kind of lessons that I used in the first phase of my business, to all the other phases of my business.
Whatever your career dreams are, we can teach you to be both creative and innovative in how you solve business challenges. With 13 undergraduate and 4 graduate programs of study in Belmont's Massey College of Business, there's a program for you. Will you be our next success story? Find out more at belmont.edu/business.
So, Kristin, thank you so much for your time. Before I let you go, can we do some rapid fire questions?
Of course.
Okay. What is the best wedding location? Or the best one that you've been to? Best wedding that you've photographed?
A poppy field in the south of France.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. They rented a chateau and had all their friends and family there, and the poppies were blooming in the field. I've never seen anything like it.
Wow. I'm going to look up those photos. I want to see that. What's your favorite cake flavor?
Red velvet.
Do you eat the cakes at the weddings?
I do.
You do. What's something new happening in your life right now that you're excited about?
I'm going to homeschool, world school my son next year, and doing history units in different countries. I'm so excited.
Wow. What grade is he going to be in?
First grade.
Wow.
So we're just taking short trips to be like I have a photo shoot in Greece coming up, and so I'm going to take him and we're going to learn about ancient Greece.
I mean, why not?
Why not? What if?
Can you adopt me?
Sure. Come on.
What's the first thing you do when you get up in the morning?
Check my phone. It's bad. And then I go on a walk. I don't have a great millionaire mindset morning ritual, but I do go on a walk, and that does change everything.
That's really great. Do you have a favorite book?
I would say The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. It's not like an easy read, but it is about how your body stores trauma, and how your body stores trauma and past experiences. And we didn't really touch on this, but I do think learning how to emotionally regulate yourself as a business owner is a key skill to sticking with this. Because if you're not emotionally regulated and if you can't kind of ground yourself, you'll kind of be miserable all the time. So I think like learning how to do those practices and kind of ground back into your body is really, really helpful.
Yeah, that book is really fascinating. Yeah. Okay, switching gears. Final question. Your son, I love your son. He is hilarious. So do you have one little quote from Hudson of something hilarious that he has said?
I'm not going to be able to think of it. Oh, but he loves to go up to strangers and just be like, did you know I have 2 dads? And he likes to make people uncomfortable, but it's really cute.
He's so outgoing.
He's so outgoing.
He's awesome.
I need to think of a better quote from him. He's so funny.
That's pretty funny because they probably assume something very different than what the scenario is. Yeah.
It's cute.
It's so cute. Okay. Kristin, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm just so glad that you are a part of the Entrepreneurship Center this year at Belmont, and I'm so excited to get you meeting students, and we just love the work you've done. You never cease to impress me. I'm grateful to be your friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on here. And yeah, if you're listening, because I'm one of the entrepreneurs in residence, like get on my calendar. We will brainstorm through things because that is my favorite thing to do.
Yes. Amazing. All right. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. What If is produced by Old Soul. For links and show notes, please visit belmontetp.com/whatif. Until next time, keep asking what if.